This is Indie Live Radio, and it's time for our weekly Yes Group Spotlight. And this week, the spotlight is on Yes Edinburgh West. So recently, the Yes Edinburgh West group organised an online meeting to look at recent developments towards establishing a national organisation for the Scottish independence movement. The speakers are Andrew Wilson from All Under One Banner, who will be giving a bit of an update about a possible national membership organisation, possibly to be called Yes Alba. And also we'll hear from Lindsay McRae of Yes Edinburgh and Lothians, and Lindsay will be talking about the National Yes Network. Lindsay is joined by Sharon Trish, who also talks a bit about the Yes Network. So Indie Live Radio, very grateful to Edinburgh West for letting us share the audio from this meeting, and we hope you enjoy it. Here it is.
I'll just begin and welcome everybody to the first meeting, the first ever Zoom meeting of Yes Edinburgh West. Anyway, many of us over this last few months have had a sort of anxiety about the apparent lack of preparation and progress towards India F2, although of course COVID has had a major distracting effect. I think I've also had an anxiety about a lack of a pro-independence campaign group, you know, if you like, a Yes Scotland group that's not party political. You know, there's a plethora of local Yes groups, of which this is one. We've got the Women for Independence, the pensioners and so on. I'm also in NHS for Yes. But in addition to that, we've got one or two national groups. The Believe in Scotland group, which is a Gordon McIntyre Kent's group, which is a branch of Business for Scotland. Then there's the Independence Convention with their Voices for Scotland offshoot. But basically, I've been feeling for the last 6 months that nobody has been overall leading the sort of non-party Yes campaign into eventually the referendum, the sort of no go-to group for the, you know, the media to go to or whatever. And then suddenly in the last month, perhaps in the last month, two new interesting developments have occurred. First of all, Andrew Wilson who's a member locally, both of the SNP and the Yes Group, and also is with All Under One Banner. He and All Under One Banner have been instrumental in setting up the assemblies with the aim to set up a member organisation, a little bit modelled on the Welsh Yes Cymru organisation, which has been increasing its membership massively in Wales. And at the same time as that was going on, Lindsay McRae here, perhaps for a much longer time, in fact, has been building the Edinburgh and Lothians network of Yes groups. And I can't remember how many, or he'll tell us how many groups, including Yes Pentlands and Yes Edinburgh West and so on, Edinburgh North and Leith and so on, have joined that. And then a number of us have been involved in setting up a national Yes network. I see some of the prime movers of that, or at least one of the prime movers of that in the audience, Sharon Trish. And so that's been, if you like, creating a Yes movement in an opposite direction. Now, are these two approaches, if you like, setting up the Yes membership organisation and setting up the network, are they in conflict or are they complementary? I think the latter, but anyway, our speakers are going to tell us, first of all, about, in turn, each of these ventures, and then it's going to be open to discuss it. Anyway, the first speaker is going to be Andrew Wilson from All Under One Banner. Andrew.
Ian, thank you very much. And as you said, there's some sort of circularity going on here, insofar as I spoke to this group on the 3rd of March, and here I am again. If nothing else, it proves I'm always happy to speak to this group. But I hope that I'm not the only entertainment you get this year, and that we can get someone better. Anyway, first of all, I had better make it plain that I'm not speaking on behalf of All Under One Banner this evening, nor am I speaking on behalf of an as yet unconstituted organisation, which might in due course amount to a national membership organisation as part of the Yes movement. This evening I'm speaking for myself. However, as you may be aware, I have been closely involved in the recent events which have given rise to the demand for a national membership organisation to be established. I'm not going to use PowerPoint. I'm not going to use any slideware, no focus groups, nothing fancy or technical. I'm just going to speak, and then I'll listen, and then I'll answer questions if I can. For full disclosure, I'm a member of the SNP, and as I say, I'm one of the small number of organisers of the All Under One Banner group. As you know, All Under One Banner is a small grassroots organisation which has established the reputation of arranging marches and rallies on the streets of towns and cities across Scotland. Except, of course, that during the time of COVID, it has hardly been able to do any of those things at all. When we were at the beginning of the year, pre-COVID I mean, All Under One Banner hosted a meeting in the real world, not on Zoom or Hopin. That meeting, which was called Assembly, brought just under 100 representatives from Yes organisations and others interested together for an afternoon in Bath Street in Glasgow to discuss independence and to talk about All Under One Banner's operations. It was felt at the time to have been a success, and George Kerrivan wrote some very nice words the following day in the National. But of course, we haven't been able to implement any of the product of that meeting because there haven't been any marches this year. So All Under One Banner hosted their first assembly, and shortly thereafter we had to postpone all of the marches. And just like every other organisation, we had to pivot to this new online world. So we have been organising regular talks on Zoom with writers and artists and politicians and others from across the movement. We organised and broadcast online Caylings. We've participated in joint Zoom calls with Yes Cymru and Yes for Unity, which is an Irish campaign group for a border pool there. In saying all of that, I'm making a number of points here. Specifically, I'm asserting that All Under One Banner is grassroots, that it is flexible, and that it innovates in response to changing circumstances, and that it just gets on and makes things happen. I'm not for 1 second suggesting that All Under One Banner is perfect, but it has, some have said, done a great deal to keep the independence movement going after 2014, and it has a track record of bringing many thousands of people together, whatever the weather, for happy, inclusive events which encourage and strengthen the Yes movement. Now, as All Under One Banner organised through the summer months this year and lockdown was eased, we were able to organise some very small events, static rallies we call them, and we are hoping to hold one more in Edinburgh next month if we can. My point in mentioning these is threefold, really. All Under One Banner persisted in looking for ways to mobilise and motivate the movement. It was able to think very hard and come up with a method of holding such small events in a manner and in a way to which nobody but a couple of frankly rubbish journalists could ever object. Indeed, Leslie Riddick described them as better organised than any outside broadcast she'd ever worked on. Given that she worked for the BBC mainly, I'm not absolutely sure that's a compliment, but I'm going to take it anyway. And All Under One Banner was able to build on the good work already done with Police Scotland to make sure that they were as happy as possible with what was going on. So All Under One Banner demonstrated that it was able to act quickly and act responsibly. But then the lockdowns and restrictions began again, and the static rallies started to be cancelled. But the ones which had gone ahead had brought a number, not a huge number, but had brought a number of folks together. And as we know, when indie-minded folks gather, things can happen. Now, separate from but parallel to the recent timeline that I've just described, it was also in our minds that it was now more than 6 months since the first assembly, which had been in February, and maybe we should get on and organise another one. So we kicked the plans around and came up with a structure of 2 events on consecutive weekends online in November. as we were beginning to plan the event, we were hearing from a number of different directions that there was a growing demand for a national membership organisation. Now, personally, I think that in part is because of awareness of the success of Yes Cymru, with whom all under one banner, as I've said, has been collaborating for some time. And of course, Yes Cymru is a national membership organisation. I also think that there is a growing clamour for action in terms of getting organised for 2021, which may prove to be a very important year. So it was decided that the agenda for the online assembly would include discussion and debate about a national membership organisation. That took place with around 600 people present on Saturday, the 14th of November. And at the end of that online meeting, those present were polled and 75% voted in favour of establishing a national membership organisation for the Yes movement. I should also say in passing, it's not in passing, I think it's worth noting that of that 600 or so people, the registrations that we could see included more than 150 Yes groups and also a further 70 other independence organisations such as Pensioners for India, NHS for India and others. So more than 200 groups, of whom 150 were Yes organisations, were there and participating. Now, having seen that voting, 75% in favour, frankly, there was nothing else to do but to make the second part of the online assembly, which took place the day before yesterday, last Sunday, all about setting up such an organisation. So that is what happened at the meeting, and in the course of the meeting, there was a vote in favour of establishing a national membership organisation. The first steps of that are now underway. Nominations for those to serve on the inaugural national committee are being sought, and elections to that committee will come together. Sorry, that's not quite right. And so elections for that inaugural national committee will take place over the following 7 days after nominations close. And at the end of that process, the result of the elections will be made public, and the national membership and the inaugural committee will come together to get started. The broad plan is to seek to launch the new national membership organisation on the 1st of January 2021. Now, you can tell that there is a lot of work to be done in a very short period of time, but I think with hard work and some assistance, we think we will get there. Now, that's the background to how we have got here. I should also say that thanks to the networking skills of Leslie Riddick and others, we have also met each week with, if I may call them this, the midwives who have been seeking to establish the National Yes Network. And in my view, those meetings have been both positive and helpful. Now, I'd like to speak briefly about why I think a national membership organisation is a good thing. And I would say inevitably, and you'll excuse me, but inevitably it is coloured by my experiences with All Under One Banner. I see a national membership organisation as a very vertical organisation, very vertical, albeit one with a very flat organisation at the top or in the middle, but I'll not labour the point about that because that will just confuse people. By vertical, I see it as being intended to do two things, although of course I recognise entirely it is completely up to the members what it is that the organisation does or does not do. I see it as being able to mobilise people quickly, whether for marches or demos or simply responding to events, such as an unexpected visit by Johnson. So the ability to get a message out directly to members and to act is important. Now, that's very much, to my mind, that's communicating that way vertically. But I think but in the other direction, I see it as a means to give a much greater voice to the grassroots. An organisation of any real size will be a very powerful political vehicle, and I think it will be all the more powerful if it has the joining together and the amplification of the voices of all of its members as its core purpose. Now, I'll speculate a little further in light of some of the conversations that I've had, but this is absolutely only speculation, and I am not seeking to influence or speak on behalf of an organisation that doesn't even exist yet. I think that there is merit in considering the possibility of using a national membership organisation as the front door to the established Yes network. What that means is that a simple national organisation which welcomes people in Ideally, those being welcomed in would be triaged, by which I mean we would ask them at that stage if they simply wanted to be members and had a card in their wallet or purse, or if they wanted to do more, or if they wanted to train or be more active or take responsibility for operations. We would try and triage them a little bit. Now, I recognise that's I'm maybe getting ahead of myself here, and we need to get this organisation up and running first. But I can see that it is important and there is merit in using a single national membership organisation as a welcoming, as a front door, as a welcoming portal to the Yes network, and that as part of the process of triage or of welcoming a person to the national membership organisation, they are directed to their local Yes group and any other Yes groups that they might be interested in. And also, I should say, on top of that, I can see a role potentially there for a revitalised national Yes registry app as being important in help making that journey work. As I understand it, the concern with that app at the moment is it's not being used and there's no traffic over it, and that's why it's not working. So if this was a way to give it life by rewiring a little bit at one end of it, then I think that would be a good thing, not least because we wouldn't be building anything new from scratch. We would be reusing resources and hard work that's already been done. What I also want to say, and again, this is my perspective, is that that a national membership organisation is not intended to be in conflict with anybody. As an example of that, I remember that the All Under One Banner web page has at the very front the National Yes Registries map. It's about the second thing you see on the website. And so we have All Under One Banner organisers who are trainers for the National Yes Registry app. And so we have always supported that organisation explicitly and wholeheartedly, and see it as being important to continue to do so. All Under One Banner has tried very hard to work productively and successfully with Yes groups, and has done so from time to time. In particular, I'm thinking of the march in Campbellton and also the march that was being planned for Elgin. And in particular for both those events, the local Yes groups were absolutely fundamental to the every aspect of what was being planned. So I should say, in terms of not being in conflict, I don't think that there is the possibility of a conflict with the Scottish Independence Convention, because it is not a membership organisation. It is an affiliation organisation for other organisations to come together. And I don't see that there is a conflict with Believe in Scotland. It currently is configured largely as a very successful and large, but a discussion group on Facebook. And whilst Gordon may have plans to develop it, at the moment there is no indication of those plans publicly. So it is the intention of this national membership organisation to promote unity and to promote communication for the grassroots, and to promote mobilisation, and that is intended to be the sum total of it. Now, I think I've said more than enough, so I'll be quiet now, and I'll let Ian take control of the meeting, and in due course, if there are questions, we can deal with that.
Many thanks, Andrew. That was very helpful. One point, there have been a couple of points just already in the chat. Somebody said, can we not get all the members from Yes Scotland? Well, Yes Scotland was dissolved on the day of the referendum, or the day after the referendum, and no information is available. I suspect it would have had data protection implications as well, but unfortunately, Yes Scotland, everything vanished one day after the referendum. Out of interest, I don't know, I was distracted because various people were having difficulty in getting on to Zoom during the talk. But when people join this organisation, are they going to get a membership card? Are they going to get anything else as we freebies?
Yes. So again, the organisation isn't even constituted yet, but to my mind, I know from conversations that there are people who value having a membership card in their pocket or their wallet. They see value in that, they see belonging in that, and so that is certainly something that we will do. I think one other thing that we should do is speak to Gordon McIntyre Kemp and give everyone the small version of Scotland the brief. That's partially because it's very good, but also because, as we know in Wales, Independence in Your Pocket, which has been published by Plaid Cymru, has been very successful. And again, people value that kind of thing. In this digital world in which we are operating at the moment, I think there is the distinct possibility of offering training to people, either to individuals or to yes groups, in the use of Zoom, in the use of Hopin, in the use of other platforms that we use. I think there is the opportunity to offer, again, at the moment, online content to people, be it more interesting and better hosted Zoom talks or collaborations. We know that SIC is hosting an entertainment evening in a week or two, so there's always plenty of opportunities for that. So yes, it's important, and I suspect there would be a discount in the shop as well. So yes, we need to. There needs to be an offering. People need to know what they're getting for their money, and the intention certainly is that they would get something.
Yeah, I guess I probably could benefit from the training in Zoom. But anyway, thanks very much, Andrew. We'll move on to Lindsay. Lindsay, I've already told you, is the coordinator for Yes Edinburgh and Lothians, and he, as well as myself, have been attending the meetings and setting up the National Yes network, which Sharon Trish is one of, who's in the audience, is one of the, as Andrew put it, the midwives of that organisation. Lindsay.
Thanks, Ian, and hello, everybody. My comments are not going to be as detailed and deep as Andrew's have been, because other than being involved with the setting up of this new organisation, new National Yes Network, my whole world revolves around being in Yes anyway. Groups are part of that, but not the whole thing. You'll probably get that drift when I read what I've written. Thank you for your opportunity to talk to you about this new Yes group, the National Yes Network. Every new group generates a level of interest and excitement, particularly one such as this one for the Yes movement. So I'll start with the good news, which is, as of last weekend, the National Yes Network has been formed. Now, you may well ask what this new group is all about and why people think it's necessary. Fair enough. But first, let me indulge in my loose version of history about how we are where we are today on the independence journey. During the campaign for Scottish independence leading up to the referendum in 2014, the movement that came to be called Yes grew from very small beginnings, probably over a couple of inspiring drinks in an unknown pub by unknown people in a very well-known country. After the tragedy of the referendum result, everyone thought the Yes movement would disappear and be forgotten. Just a blip, not big enough to register on the important scale that was fired up by the sheer joyful engagement for the common cause and independent Scotland. Many of you will remember the drive and generated expectation of that time with fondness. Meeting with and working with total strangers, learning new skills in what was for many the totally alien field of politics. It was for me anyway. But all united utterly in the belief that this was Scotland's time to go forward, with the next step following the reconvening of our Parliament in 1999 by Winnie Ewing. Earlier in those proceedings, it was clear things were taking a big leap forward. Donald Dewar, the man credited with making it happen, said, "There shall be a Scottish Parliament." I like that, and so did the Scottish people. That's a brief look at where we are now is on this fantastic journey. So what do we do? After the referendum result, after the week, came the realization our dream was not gone. The Yes group stayed together. Though not in the same numbers, the remaining Yes groups started meeting again. Slowly, they began to realize their country was not only wanted independence, it needed to be independent. And the grassroots movement began to reform. Such as here in Edinburgh West, all over this city and the country started with what they anticipated would be a fairly short campaign towards the next so-called IndyRef 2. There was a new, different vigor on show. There was no Yes Scotland by now, not since the day after the referendum, and their decision to close the Glasgow office and call it a day, which probably had one of the biggest psychological impacts on the whole movement. After all, if you lose the head of your organisation in such a manner, deflation can only be expected. And so into the next 6 years, in which it became clearer and clearer through many events and rallies held all over the country, from Ayr to Inverness and Galashiels to Inverary, the incredible numbers of up to 200,000 people who thronged the streets of Glasgow from Kelvin Grove to Glasgow Green and down Edinburgh's historic High Street and Hollywood Park, all through the fantastic efforts and organising by AUOB. The people began to realise that the Yes movement had to be rekindled, and we, us, the Yes movement, were the people to do it. The Yes movement itself, while taking part in these events and more, realised that if the cause for independence in our country was to be achieved, we have to get ourselves organised properly. And here I talk of what happened in Edinburgh. And from what I gather, similar ideas and directions were forming at the same time in other areas as well. For us, the idea of a regional group started to take shape about 4 years ago in a pub, yes, Tanner's at Juniper Green. The idea to form a Lothian grouping of Yes groups. 80 people showed up from all over the area, some of whom are here tonight. And from that, the seed for YEL, Yes Edinburgh and Lothians, was sown. For a long time, all we had to show for the enthusiasm generated was a closed Facebook page, which we still have and still many people use. But it was a start. 2 years ago, the current YEL group was formed, which now includes 25 groups taking part, plus 2 others. By others, I mean people like the pensioners and the WFI and so on. And there's the European group as well. Our group is not boundary sensitive and includes indie supporting groups who wish to join us, such as Yes for EU. It meets approximately every 6 weeks, depending on what's happening. It is currently involved with contacting and meeting with all Lothian MPs and MSPs. And our next meeting is in January 8th with an MP. The regional group is always welcoming to the new reforming groups or reforming groups while respecting their right to stay as they are at present. Not now to why we are here tonight, following the news that the new National Yes Network has been set up, formed from regional groups such as Yes Edinburgh and Lothians. The idea of forming the National Yes Group has been mooted in conversations in pubs, of course, for some time, as well as earlier this year by Leslie Riddoch at a meeting at Craigmillar. At that meeting, the discussion was round how a letter sent by Yes Highlands and Islands last year to all their parliamentary representatives had received very positive results. Other regions and groups in Scotland had been circulated with the Highland Initiative, including YEL, and it came aboard with their own letter based on the Highland template to our local parliamentarians, as I've mentioned already. While all that was going on, 3 people, Alison Fraser from HL and I, Sharon Trish from PIN, and Pete Winfield from our camp, began formulating the idea of a national body. What they came up with was presented at some informal meetings with interested bodies and individuals. They had a timetable for setting up the body, which in the scheme of things seemed very short. 3 people, Ian Grant, Ian Grant, Lynn Hasty from Haddington, and myself from Yes Pentlands, found themselves at an ad hoc meeting and were enthused by what they heard from Trish, enough to become part of the group that started to put together the idea. However, after only 3 months, their drive and commitment ensured the formation of the new network, as I said, last Sunday morning. It is a group formed entirely from the Yes movement. As such, it will be run by committed, experienced Yes people, from delegates elected by and from the regional groupings. They in turn have been formed, just like Yell, from the local Yes groups. As with the National Yes Network, it will be an elected group. It will be an elected group, not a top-down appointed group. It will be a big group of communication, cooperation, and coordination, the 3 C's. This new group is seen as filling a gap in the Yes movement, which is primarily one of communication, not just among ourselves, but for working with and between all other indie bodies. Cooperation would be at all levels within the movement in helping with development, for instance. Its aim and purpose is independence, nothing else. Currently, there are 6 regions taking part: Northeast, which is Aberdeen area, Highlands and Islands, Yes Edinburgh and Lothians, Angus, Borders, and Fife. Others will be encouraged to follow and join as the regions come together as a representative body. It is proposed that each region will be represented by 3 elected delegates, each with a vote. Funding for the group is ongoing, and as you may probably realize, takes a lot of time. Already, there have been informal meetings with the other major groupings such as AUOB, SIC, Business for Scotland, and SIF, to name but 4. During the formation of the National Yes Network, a lot of valuable and important information has been gathered to help form how the group intends to proceed. At this point, it would be unfair to all to speculate how any of that can be used. These are the bare bones of the idea and purpose for the National Yes Network. And as I've tried to indicate, much of the backroom has been already done to help make that happen, particularly in the world of Zoom and Hop On. Thank you for listening. I hope that's helped you.
Thank you very much indeed, Lindsay. I notice with Sharon there as well, it might be helpful just to have a few words from Sharon, if I can see you.
Okay. Thank you, Lindsay, for that. I think that was a really good overview of what we've done. And what he talked about was how organically the Lothian groups got together. That's what's been happening all over Scotland. And I think, Yes, Highlands and Islands is a regional network. They've been involved since about 2016 or 2017, bringing the groups together physically in the Highlands. I mean, so you can imagine people had to travel quite a bit to attend meetings of this group, but they've done it for years. And so they've kind of been our model of how do you get local groups together to talk about what's going on in the local communities and to make plans for things like leafleting and getting information out. And they just kind of felt that the MPs and MSPs were not talking about independence enough. So they decided to write letters to them and say, what's your deal? And they've heard back from all of them. and they've had meetings, face-to-face meetings with, certainly with Ian Blackford and Kate Forbes and others. So this model is not new, but what we're hoping is that other individual groups across Scotland can get together and form what is organic for them, what groups are around them. And it's not something that we all naturally do, but the local groups can struggle quite a bit, especially in COVID, to try and do something or feel like it's okay to do something. But thank goodness for Zoom. We have meetings going on now all across Scotland, and we have regional meetings like Lindsay's talking about, Yell or Highlands and Islands. I'm part of Perthshire Independence Network, and we have Zoom meetings every 2 weeks because we felt it was very important that we get to know each other and we start moving, and because we don't have much time left. And the model I'm part of, Yes Strathairn, we just started in February, and then COVID happened, and we waited a couple months, and then we started Wednesday night Zooms where all we do is just blether. And it's an avenue for us to talk about what's frustrating us or what have we heard, or we aren't doing anything yet, but that's a lot, you know, as long as you can get to know each other and trust each other and then be ready. So part of this is being ready. And part of it is just making these connections that we haven't naturally had across Scotland. And I just met the most wonderful people on Zoom. And I agree with you, whoever was talking about how Zoom is difficult. You can't read bodied language. You don't know what else they're doing. You don't know if people are listening or hearing, you know. And then when they take their picture away, you have no idea what's going on. So it is a little bit challenging, but I'm really impressed with all the people that we've had on these meetings. Sunday mornings for 2 hours, we've had 5 of these, and people have shown up. They've participated. They've gone into work groups. They came up with the name. They came up with the purpose, and the purpose is connecting and networking. It's not campaigning. It's networking and connecting, which we believe if we can do this all across Scotland and link up all these local groups, we will be ready for a campaign. Whatever needs to happen, we're linked up, and we'll be linked up after independence. So it's a really good model. It's a very democratic model in many ways, and democracy is messy and it takes lots of time, like you were saying, Lindsay. It takes a lot of time. So that's what we've been doing. We have reached out. We informed the SNP that this is what we were doing, and we informed Believe in Scotland initially because we did not want to step on any toes. We knew that he was connecting with local Yes groups, and we wanted him to know that we were forming this that would help. It would help whatever message needs to get out, whatever needs to be mobilized. It's these existing local groups connecting up and supporting each other and doing things together and planning together. So those are the first 2. We certainly heard about what AUOB was doing, so we set up some meetings with Andrew. I'm trying to think if there's anybody else we were in touch with. But we now have, like Lindsay said, there's 7 or 8 established Yes networks across Scotland, and more are getting together. So our goal is to get, Scotland all crossed over, that they will be connected all, and in a very, very short time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yeah.
So there we are. We've got the 2 new movements that have started really in the last month. Although obviously the local groups were there. Our local group, Yes Edinburgh West, I think we got together in 2015. So and then we got a big boost with Brexit in June of 2016 when the bar in the Clermiston Inn was pretty well packed solid. They're not all stuck with us all the time since then, but then that's not surprising. The only issue that, a lot of people get worried about, that we've got to be cohesive as well. And, in addition to the 2 groupings that are here tonight, there are the Scottish Independence Convention and also Gordon McIntyre Kemp's organisation. I mean, just Andrew, again, we'll come back to Lindsay and Sharon as well. But Andrew, first of all, where do you think the role of SIC is as opposed to this organisation? And before you speak, I'll actually mention that Ailey said with your membership cards, make sure they're environmentally friendly, which I'm sure you'll take note of. Anyway, Andrew.
Well, I think I mentioned, as I understand it, well, there's two things. I think SIC has had a long and complex path to get to where it is now. I was talking to one of the original 4 co-conveners this morning, and they were talking about the weight that was on people's shoulders and how hard it was to make it work. I'm minded that certainly we're told that it took SIC 2 years to agree a constitution, which is not time that we have available here. As I understand it, SIC is an affiliation organisation. You cannot join it as an individual, and that probably is the distinction here with respect to them. But that's not to say that that's not to say that a national membership organisation wouldn't pursue means to increase the impact that SIC and Voices for Scotland has by bringing it more effectively to a wider range of the Yes movement. And that applies to, as well, I used the example of Scotland the Brief earlier on. I think there's an opportunity here to make sure that we maximise every part of the Yes movement, all of the components, allow them to play to their strengths. And that's a point actually I'll touch on. All under one banner organises marches and rallies on the streets of towns and cities across Scotland, period, notwithstanding the COVID times. And I think there's an argument that that is what they do. They shouldn't do anything else. I think it's a very strong argument that organisations should stick to that, should operate in their, either develop strengths and maximise them, or should operate to their strengths and maximise them in cooperation and collaboration with other groups. And that way, we get the best coverage and we allow people to play to their strengths. And so that's my expectation of how this would work.
I see a question from, I think perhaps I've taken it down wrongly, or perhaps it's Ailey again, is asking about how are you going to ensure a diversity of people in the elected positions?
That's an interesting question. Well, there's a number of aspects to it. The franchise for the appointments of this inaugural, not the eventual, but the inaugural National Committee, the franchise for that is people who had expressed an interest. So everyone who registered for the Assembly on the 14th of November and everyone who registered for the Assembly on the 22nd of November. Now, that's an odd way of putting it because the second group was a subset of the first group, but it's the way that the discussion went on the 22nd, so that's the way I'm expressing it. So there's a very clear franchise there with whom we can communicate immediately and directly because they had registered. And those who attended the meeting on the 22nd agreed that that should be the franchise. As for ensuring diversity, that is not something that has been put front and centre in the establishment of the inaugural National Committee. I am mindful that I am always exceedingly mindful, speaking as and people have heard me say this before, a middle-aged, middle-class, white Protestant straight man, that I do not represent the country in any way. It's ridiculous. The requirement for there to be diversity is absolute and is understood. In terms of it being an open process, and there is currently no regime that enforces diversity. But I would say that, as with everything else with this association, if that is what the members wish it to do, then there will be the opportunity to make that happen. We're at the very early stages of this. We've, as I say, there's not even a national committee formed yet. But the plan is to move very at pace to a position where that inaugural committee stands down because they have done what is necessary to get the organisation standing up. That's a terrible way of putting it. And at that point, and the initial constitution will have been agreed by the members at that point, by those who attended and voted at that point. But then it will move on and it will grow quickly once. But it's about getting the founds in place quickly.
What about, thank you, what about Lindsay and Sharon? How do you think the network is going to fit in with, Yes Alaba or whatever it calls. Do you see, you know, obviously when you set up into motion the establishment of the network, you perhaps didn't entirely anticipate that you'd have this different organization forming from a different direction. How do you see that you're going to relate to Yes Alba in due course?
And I'll just say a few words, and then maybe Sharon will, well, I'm sure Sharon will want to say something as well, if nothing else to correct me. I see the National Yes Network as just that. It is the networking group for the Yes movement. Currently, I don't have any vision beyond being just that. The details of how it'll be all set up, i.e. with its, whether it even has committees or whether it even has a constitution, have still to be decided. But it'll be decided with, I think I would be right in saying, either an interim group to form the main group from, similar to what Andrew's talking about. But its only aim, its only raison d'etre, if you like, is independence. In my view, it's all to do with that, and other organisations that we've talked about. I've mentioned pensioners and so on. There's a myriad of groups out there, but while they are welcome, I would envisage them being welcomed through regional groups to be part of the main Yes group, the Yes network group. Is that what you would think, Sharon?
I think you said it perfectly. I know there's an anxiety amongst the Yes movement that we're too late, that we're not moving quickly. And certainly, you know, when I started talking with people about this, it's something we should have done last year, the year before. You know, these groups were here, but we needed something to push us. And I guess for me, it was Leslie Riddoch talking at the National Yes Registry conference. And what she said was, or training, she said, the Yes movement has incredible power. We have no idea how much power we have. And when people said, you know, well, there should be a figurehead, and you know what, if there's a figurehead, they get shot down. The beauty of this network is that it's all of us, and we're all over the country, and we all have voices, and that's Scotland. That's the sovereign people of Scotland. It's not one person talking for all of us and telling us what we should do. So I think that Lindsay is absolutely right. It's a network, and this network will decide what they're going to do based on listening to the people on the local level and these Yes networks that are the conduit between the national. So we still have lots of work to do to set those up. But I think if we've got them set up, it doesn't matter what's happening. We have these connections, and you know, we can mobilize very, very quickly with people we know on the local level. So I absolutely believe in local level connecting with other local level, and not so much vertical, but that's a model. So I don't know, Ian, I don't know. And I think it's up to the national network to figure out how they work with these other entities. Sometimes I get a vision where I can see it all connecting, and then sometimes I can't. So I think we're all probably like that. We know in the end, we need to work together to get this to happen, to get us over the line and into an independent Scotland. Thank you. Okay.
Where do the parties fit in, Lindsay and Sharon, in the network?
The new network is separate from there's no party allegiance in any way at all, any party, and I think there's nothing more to say on it. That's the plan. It'll have no allegiance to any party.
And Andrew.
And yes, Ian, as you were saying, the intention for this national membership organisation is a one-to-one relationship between members and the organisation. Obviously, in terms of communicating outwards, you would use people who have the best connections and the best links in sectors or industries or whatever. But in terms of distinguishing a national membership organisation from everything else, it's a membership organisation, not affiliation. So if members of different groups wish to join the national membership organisation, then that's fine, but they join as individuals.
Yeah, that's a sort of distinction from the SIC, where the Greens are represented as such, the SNP are represented as such, but the other parties I don't think are represented, which seems kind of unfair. I don't know if they've worked that out as yet. Somebody asked also about what's happened to the Indie app, and is that not a way to connect? I don't know who can fill us in about the Indie app.
I'll say this is just my view, but what I've been told, or sorry, it's not even my view, it's what I've been told. For whatever reason, the Indie app is not generating the amount of traffic over it that would make it a success. Very few people, not enough people are using it, and that's the current problem.
Can I say something? We have had contact with Jason a couple of times, and Jason is intending to launch in December. I think many of us agree if we used it, we would get used to it. That's the problem. It's not that people aren't using it now, it's that it's not ready yet for us to use. And I know many of us have been frustrated with this, but we see Jason and what his work has done is essential to these connections. And I mean, you know, AUOB uses the map on the website, but if you choose a local group, you have to get back to joining and registering in the India. So before we start using it or say we're not going to use it, I think we need to certainly have conversations with Jason, and we do plan to have another one. This will be our third with him. So,
okay, good. I see another chat message from Keith Bramall up in Caithness. It's nice to hello to Caithness. Saw nice pictures of the Aurora Borealis on Twitter yesterday, was it? Yes, Caithness are, like everybody else, getting a bit frustrated, tired and angry. And so they are in the process of getting our big boards ready to be placed in different locations in the county. And you see, here's another issue. Oban has been building up a poster library and which you can join and have big banners, if you like, which you can then put at the corner of your garden or whatever, and share it around. And these are the sort of ideas that can be shared around the network. Are there any? Oh, just one thing else, Andrew. If anybody here in the audience, on the Zoom or in the Facebook, fancies standing for your committee, they've got till 12 noon tomorrow. Is that right?
So the franchise for that process is limited to those who had expressed an interest in participating in the two meetings. So it's not a public vote in that sense. Not least because organising this vote has been quite a considerable challenge. Organising a public vote would have been nothing's impossible, but it would have been very difficult. So we've taken a process in terms of getting this going, to funnel people's energy to getting it going, and then it'll be opened up. One would anticipate that the next national committee, which would run for a year or so, that would be subject to it would have to be subject to much wider elections. But again, within the membership.
Somebody was bursting to stand. Could they stand?
Not if they participated if they were registered to participate in either of the two assemblies, then yes.
Okay, that's grand. Fine. I don't particularly want to stray onto the politics of it all, and because there have been questions about Section 30 orders, and there's also been questions about the other new list parties. Andrew, have you spoken to Keith Brown or members of the SNP about?
Well, there's a number of aspects to that, but I'll be very quick. So Ian Blackford participated in the first of the assemblies, and you can see him on YouTube saying that he supports the idea of a national membership organisation. So we have his involvement. Others in the SNP are aware of what's going on. Our approach has been to make a public offering, if you will, to provide a a space in public for anybody and everybody to come forward, and so we've tried to be as democratic and as simple as that. But yes, it was certainly Ian Black after his I was going to say grilling, that's too strong. After his live Q&A with Leslie, I think he's in no doubt.
Yeah. Okay. I've got comments here from Facebook from Barry Hannaford, who is another local member, to ensure that this is no more than another bubble and talking shop. If there are two key steps to independence, how can this organisation or movement contribute to each?
He has 7 steps, Ian, 7 steps.
7, sorry, I can't read. Oh gosh, I'm going to have to go through all this. Keeping the SNP focus on independence, holding their feet to the fire, given the workings of the D'Hondt system, how do we work to ensure list candidates? Given the duplicity of the British state, how do we work to ensure substantial presence of international observers at Holyrood and India F2? How do we ensure that the SNP and other pro-Indy parties have a clear manifesto commitment to progress independence? How do we campaign to ensure the largest possible support for both India F2 and independence at Holyrood 21? How do we ensure we protect Scotland's resources and have a clear agreed timetable for progress once India F2 is won? My goodness. 7, expecting dirty tricks from the UK state establishment and media. How do we make certain of a clear win on India F2? Now, to be honest, I don't know how I'm going to ask you to address all these, but what I could say, I suppose, is, first of all, for the Lindsay and Sharon, how do we, concentrate the SNP perhaps back onto the main objective of independence? And then I'll come and ask Andrew where he thinks his, or Yes Alba, could also contribute to that.
Do you want to go first, Lindsay?
Okay. So quite a mixed question, a difficult question.
Well, I'll just concentrate on the basic question. What he's really saying is we've got to make the SNP get off its backside and get organised.
I think if we're all looking at what's been discussed here tonight between both organisations, they are currently thinking and working the way they are because of the perceived lack of effort by the political parties towards independence. There's loads of evidence for thinking that, whether political parties like it or not. I think it applies to all parties, whether they're old parties like the SNP or new parties like the ISP. The same thing applies. If you say you're an independence party and you are working as an independence party, then do so. And the Yes movement is here to help, to be part of, to be really involved. We're the foot soldiers, if you like, of whatever goes on for the next referendum, whatever it might be. But I think it's important for our network, at least, to be not drawn into being supportive of any parties at all, even whether it's through its membership or how it does things. Working with, by all means, goodness me, the political side is a vehicle for the whole thing, whether we like it or not. But we, the Yes movements, are the foot soldiers. We are the people that galvanize people. Politicians go out of their way not to galvanize people. Currently, anyway. Some of the stuff I was reading today was horrifying. So that's the role that I see for them.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I think that's, I completely agree with what Lindsay's saying. The purpose in a national membership organisation is to secure independence. Part of that is by demonstrating the size and enthusiasm, I'll put it in those terms, of the movement and those that comprise the movement, and bringing their voice together, as I said, joining it together and amplifying it, and directing that voice in whatever direction is necessary in order to secure independence. And so, especially with no party affiliations at all, and it being a direct membership organisation, I think that gives it on the one hand, it has strengths and weaknesses to it, obviously. But one of the strengths is that it becomes very easy to say, "This is what the people would like. Please get on with it."
Yeah.
Any other words on that?
Oh, I'll pipe in. Because Lindsay was right. I always have things to say. If this is an organized network of yes groups, we can do whatever we want. But there are lots of things going on within the membership of the SMP that maybe people don't know about. And so I think if we hear about that, we need to certainly utilize it and support it. But there are things we can do. And, if I think about Highlands and Islands, just writing that simple letter, and it just got fire under their MPs and MSPs. You did the same thing, Lindsay. Yell wrote a different version of the letter, and they have got their MPs are like, oh, okay, I better, And what I found is that I don't think they really understand grassroots, and they certainly don't understand the yes communities because they're a political party. And so I think if you're focused on politics and elections and things like that, you're not necessarily going to see this other side. You see the same people maybe at SMP things, and they're also in yes stalls and things like that. And yes, we wear a couple of different hats, many of us. But if we organize around action that helps people see this. I mean, there's letters that can be written all over the place, and we just don't understand that letters work. They don't just work in newspapers, they work in other ways. These massive things. For example, what you guys are doing, AUOB is doing with the EU for Yes, and the picture holding up a sign and then publishing that. It's a very simple thing, but that's the kind of thing that I think yes groups are doing anyway. Like the guy from Cape Ness was talking about putting up the big boards. That's what we need to see. And for a while there, it's going to be candidates. We certainly will see these signs for candidates because that's the first hurdle is making sure that this election happens before Holyrood. But in the meantime, we still have people that want to do much bigger things than candidates. And so I think we need to do it as much as we can from the local level as much as possible, but connecting to others so that we can make it a concerted effort. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Galaxy A40, whoever he or she is, says, leave the process to the politicians. For the yes movement, there's only one key step to independence. Convince many more of our fellow citizens that it's better to be independent. I guess most of us would agree about that, and there are various components to what we do along these lines. And these movements will be able to help. One other thing, I guess, the SNP might get a little bit worried that, Andrew, that your organisation might sort of take some of the money away, but I mean, I suppose that's one of these things that will work itself out in due course.
Yes. There's the purpose of the organisation is not to defund any other organisation, but your point's well made. Yeah,
and then Joyce, everyone says we can convince people by the bucketful, but without a date to work towards. We could be plodding along in 2020 in Brexit Britain, or it would have to be 2021, I guess, with Scotland's wealth depleted. So,
whilst Alison's joining, I'll just amplify the point that Sharon made. If you have a look at today's National, there's an article by Leslie Riddick talking about a campaign associated with the imposition of either a hard Brexit or a useless Brexit against the will of the people of Scotland. And so that campaign is starting at the moment, but people please be encouraged to participate in that. It's a great idea and it's very straightforward. Alison, I'll shut up, sorry.
I was just going to make the point that we're in a very different position than we were in 2014 when, Alex Salmond announced we were having a referendum. and we all got together and started campaigning from like 2012. This time, our roadblock is to actually get the chance to have a campaign. As somebody, I think it was Joyce, that said about, we need a date, which I do agree with. You don't have a project unless you have a date. So, it's random series of tasks at that point. But what we have as a network, and I think we need to be aware of our strength, is organisation gives you power. Organisation gives you momentum, and the politicians are there at the pleasure of the electorate. And I don't think we should forget that. And the more we organise, the more a momentum for change we create. It happens all over the world in politics. It used to be called the mailing list. We're now calling it the network. But if we can, galvanise and energise across Scotland, then they cannot ignore us. Now, there's lots of things that we, and I know National Yes Registry, IndyApp's been mentioned. There's lots of, although we have been talking to the guys and we're aware of it, and many of us were on the training, etc. It's interesting that we both independently came to the same conclusion of what was needed, what the gap was, and the reason that is because we both went through the exercise of what did we do well in 2014, what did we not do well, what could we have done that we've learned in the 6 years since for a lot of these groups that have continued to be active. What could we do now, what do we know now that we didn't know then? And this is where it comes to the network, the hierarchical structure called bottlenecks in the distribution of materials, for the sharing of ideas. We did amazingly well considering we didn't have, an actual network. Catalonia is often mentioned. Catalonia have an exceptionally, proficient network that can get 1 million people on the street. That is what we need to create. We need to create the momentum. And to do that, we need no barriers to entry, not a political party barrier, not a financial barrier, not any barrier except, all you need to enter, to onboard, is a group with an email address that's generic, so that we can connect you regionally, locally, regionally, and nationally. And, at that point, it becomes a really powerful machine, a political machine to drive the political, enabler, an enabler rather than a machine to drive the politicians and let them see what it is we need them to do. So I think that is where the groups differ. I created a diagram, which I've shared with some people who are on here, of a jigsaw and how the whole independence movement, the landscape looks, and how we all need a value product, something that's a unique value product into the movement, because we've still got lots of gaps, but we don't want to duplicate effort. So we need to be really cognizant of the as is and what we need and focus on filling those gaps, because there's a lot of amazing creativity and energy out there. But if we want to play as a team, we have to not all be running after the ball. We have to cover the entire field. And that is one of the kind of key things that we're trying to do. But what I would say is, for our interaction with Andrew and AUOB, and Gordon with, Believe in Scotland, and, whatever else. The one thing I think we all agreed is we don't want to have any affiliations, because we see that as a barrier. But it's the interfaces, the parts of the jigsaw that connect. That's the bits we need to work together. How can we all help each other move this whole thing forward? And that's really all I really want to say. A network is created so that you cannot cut the head off it. It's a branched network that you can add to and make it as easy as possible for new people. And the more doors, my group is whole Raising Detra, Butterflies Rising, is a wider door, a longer table. On the same premise, we need many doors for people to come in, whether it's young mums for Indy or EIS for Indy, as we said earlier on, or, like we've got pensioners for Indy, which is fantastic. But wherever people meet like minds, come together, but the common purpose is independence, and not to defocus from that, because we simply don't have time.
Well said. Excellent. I think this is going to be a very interesting end to the year and start of next year for lots of reasons, for what happens with Brexit. And I shouldn't laugh, because I think it could be terrible, really. But there's, all the organisation going on, and we hope that by the spring of next year that we might be much more out in the streets and campaigning and possibly canvassing might take a wee bit longer, but certainly leafleting and certainly street work and street stalls and marches might not be too far away in the future as well. So I think probably we'll wrap up there.
I'll just nip in with to follow up on Terry's question, because that came from Facebook, I think, about was Yes Alba the name, and Andrew had answered him to say no, does not yet have a name. Yes Alba is just shorthand.
All that remains for me is thanks for joining us. Thank you for those folk who are come on from around the country. Nice to see that Caithness is represented, and Perthshire and Stirling and whatever. And thanks especially to the speakers. Thanks to Andrew, thanks to Lindsay, and thanks also to Sharon and to Ali for joining and giving their views on the matter. Thanks.
You've been listening to Indie Live Radio Yes Group Spotlight programme, which this week featured the Yes Edinburgh West group. We just want to say thank you very much to them for allowing us to share their audio from their meeting with all of you. If you'd like to hear of the latest situation for the national membership organisation, Yes Alba, have a look on our SoundCloud channel and you'll find an interview there, again with Andrew Wilson, just bringing us a little bit up to date about recent developments.